Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. In this podcast, your host, Gloria Me, will invite a bookish guest to share their favorite book recommendation. If you share a passion for books and always looking for your next read, then join us. Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. Today's bookish guest is Ginger from G Reads Books on Instagram. Hi, Ginger.
Hi, Laura.
So happy to have you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
First, thanks for having me. This is really cool. So I'm a 30-something-year-old teacher living in Texas. And as you know, I love to read. And romance is pretty much my genre of choice, I guess I would say. I haven't always been a romance reader, though. I would probably say within maybe the last 3 to 4 years, it's kind of just slowly gravitated towards that way. I haven't always been a reader my entire life, actually. I didn't really get into books until I was an adult, which whenever I tell people that now, they always find that shocking because I read so much. And most people associate me with reading. So I kind of like to consider it as I'm making up for lost time.
So what brought you into romance? Like, how did you get into the genre?
I feel like with this genre, I've always liked romance, not specifically, even when I was younger, when I would watch TV shows and movies, that was always the theme that kind of like captured me the most. I feel like with romance, there's so many different levels of feeling that you can identify with and kind of expand on. And so that's what I've always it's something that's realistic to me, something that I can relate to. And I think that's what pulls me most to it.
That's amazing. So we're chatting all things romance. And so what do you love about the genre the most?
I would probably say what I love the most about it is romance is not just like one story to be told. You get so many different variations of it. For one thing, there's all different age levels that it can apply to. When I first started really getting into romance, it was more of the YA contemporary. And once I realized that, okay, I really do like romance more, that's when I started reading more of the adult romance, which is obviously a little bit more mature. But I feel like what I love so much specifically about adult romances is that you can be laughing one minute and find a book completely hysterical, and then the next minute you can be crying over something, and it can just totally take you from one emotion to the next. And I love just feeling things when I read. And so I always know that I can get that from a really well-written romance.
Yeah, I really have to say that's like a big part of it. It just gets you to your journey of emotions. It just takes you from one place to the other, knowing that the end is going to be happy ever after or happily for now. But there's a journey there.
Exactly. And you got to always root for the happily ever after.
Yeah, so this is awesome. Now let's talk about romance tropes. What is your favorite romance?
Well, I'm always a sucker for enemies to lovers. I feel like if it's really well done, that's where you get your most tension, best banter, things like that. I like fake relationships too, because those are always fun. Kind of going along with the character, it's fake, but then you also know, okay, this is going to turn into something real. And so it's fun to kind of see that through the eyes of the characters. And then forced proximity. That's always a great one. Because, you know that something, because of their surroundings, they're forced together, that something is going to happen.
Yeah, the just one bed or just no sleeping bed or snowed in or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have to say. How about what is your least favorite romance trope?
Okay, my least favorite is probably, I know this is a lot of people's favorite, but I have a reason for it, is second chance romance. Now, I don't want to say like all of them I don't like. I'm not a big fan of them when you don't really get enough of their backstory, because I feel like if it's a second chance, I want to know what happened the first time. And if the story builds enough to let you know what happened the first time and why they're meeting again later, then I'm okay with that. I just don't like it when it jumps right into the second chance romance and you feel like you just jumped into the middle of the story.
Yeah, I have to say that there's a fine balance. I think with second-chance romance, there's also part of it where they're broken up, and there might be a reason why they should be broken up, and
Right.
it doesn't merit for them to come back together. So it is understandable. That could be a least favorite trope.
Yeah. And I'm also not really a fan of the insta loves. I
Yeah,
need a build up,
yeah,
and slow burn is awesome. Even sometimes when it's drawn out the entire book, but if it pays off in the end, I'm still good with it. But
yeah,
just the instant, it just feels kind of like, is it real?
yeah,
Like I don't know if I buy into it enough. And if I don't buy in enough to the characters, I have a really hard time connecting with the story.
yeah, yeah. I think it's love. It's just it feels like too much too soon. I think for me, it just needs to be built up. I'm fine with like no kissing until 30% or 50%. There's something to be built up for the relationship.
Right. However, though, I do like it when a book will start with, they'll jump right into the romance, but it could be like an accidental thing, and then it
Mm,
kind of tapers off, and then it
yeah.
will come back around later on. I'm okay with that. But if
Okay.
it's like 100% like first chapter and then it just keeps going, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's hard for me to stay with that.
Yeah. So, what kind of romance do you read? Do you read contemporary, historical, paranormal, fantasy, dark, etc.?
Um, I'm definitely more contemporary. I know
Okay.
that. But I also enjoy historical romances as well. I don't
Mm.
read as much of them. I have a few authors that are like my absolute go tos, and I've been trying to branch out and read more historical romances, but I would definitely classify myself as more of a contemporary romance girl.
Okay. So, for contemporary, what has been some of your favorite books of this year?
Oh gosh. Okay, so this year I have to go with the Bromance Book Club. That book was amazing. I feel like I've recommended it the most this year, not only, in Bookstagram world, but also in my personal life. I've actually gave it to my best friend for Christmas. I found myself in a conversation the other day talking to my brother-in-law who doesn't even read, but I was telling him about the book because I thought it was hilarious. But
Mm.
I feel like that has been one of like the best books, not only that I read in 2019, but definitely it's in my top 10 overall.
Mm.
Um, the Friend Zone is another one that I have to go with. Um, that one for me was definitely more a personal read. I connected with Kristen, and I don't want to like give too much away, but she just battles with infertility, and it's not that I have those issues, but I connected with her more on a personal level with the idea of thinking you would have kids one day and then realizing you're not. And so I feel like when a book really like grabs you that personally, it's pretty special.
Yeah, that's awesome. And who are your go-to historical romance authors?
Well, I always have to say Sarah McLean first because she's where I began. I love
Okay.
her so much. Have you read her books?
No, I have some of them on my TBR for 2020. So she's
Okay,
one I really
I
went to.
her current series, the Bare Knuckled Bastards books, the third book is coming out later this year,
Yeah.
and I always like to recommend that series because it's really really good. But all of her backlist stuff, like you really cannot go wrong with her. I love all of her stuff. She does really well with, I think, the way that she writes. Sometimes people, if they're not really a historical fiction reader to begin with, that might kind of detour them away from it. But I feel like the way that she tells the story is that you almost forget that it's historical because the characters feel very much alive today in our world and in our society. Like she
Okay.
does a really good job of weaving in like current things that go on in our world today. You can tell that she is very much, a strong feminist writer, and I'm all about that. And she does a really awesome job putting it into her historical romances.
Mm. Okay, so she's on top of my TBR list. I'm going to be reading very soon.
Yes.
So, awesome. So
She's amazing.
Which two books did you read over the past few months that you recommend? You mentioned the Romance Book Club. Are there any other books you recommend?
Yeah, I was actually going to recommend. So this one comes out in, oh gosh, it's crazy to me to think that we're already in January. So this book comes out in 2 weeks, I think. It's by Tessa Bailey. It's Love Her or Lose Her. She is actually an author that I just discovered last year, and I think she is a really good balance of, I mean, she's a contemporary romance writer, but I think she's a really good balance of putting a lot of heart into her book, but then also adding a good amount of steam as well. And so I think that the way that she can tell a story is very engaging, but then it's also very swoony and very, very hot. And, you know, if that's your thing, then I definitely recommend her.
Yeah, she writes hot books. So what books are on your TBR?
My ever-growing TBR.
Yeah, I know.
I know, such awful problems that we have. Well, probably at the top of my list for this year that I'm really looking forward to reading is The Heir Affair, which is the follow-up to The Royal V. Did you ever read that book?
Yes, I did, and I already pre-ordered The Heir Affair. I was like,
Awesome.
I must have this. It's so good. Yeah.
Awesome. Then you know exactly where I'm coming from with this. I love that book so much.
Yes, it's so good. It was just like, it was just perfection. I just loved the whole story, the royalty. I read it right before I started reading romance. So this is like one of those earlier books that I read, and it was just like, I just needed it to follow up. So I was so excited that there's going to be a new book coming out.
I know. I felt like there were rumors going around for a long time, and I just didn't want to buy into it because I didn't want to get my hopes up.
I know.
And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, there's going to be an actual next book. It's very exciting.
It is very exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited to go back to that world. It's going to be good.
It's going to be great. Yeah. So thank you, Ginger. So tell us where we can find you online.
Well, Instagram is kind of like my main spot. It's at B Reads Books. I do have a blog. Unfortunately, I have not really kept up with it with the last year. What I'm doing this year is I'm making the transition a little bit more so that my Instagram account, G Reads Books, is a little bit more prominent, and kind of that's what I'm pushing out as like my first place of contact, just because I literally check it every day and I use it. And so I do have it linked to my Twitter account. Not as active on there, but Instagram is definitely the first place to go to find me.
That sounds good. I love your book recommendation. So thank you for being on the show.
Oh, well, thank you very much for asking me. This was a lot of fun.
This is fun. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.